When we imagine the Middle Ages, we picture knights, castles, and glorious battles. But the real medieval world was nothing like the stories. It was a harsh, punishing reality where survival was a privilege, not a guarantee. Behind every myth lies a truth soaked in struggle, hunger, and fear. Truths most people today never learn. From the moment you were born, society placed you into a rigid system. If you were born a peasant, your destiny was sealed before you even opened your eyes. There was no escaping your class, no opportunity to rise, no dream of a better future. You inherited your parents' duties, their debts, and their burdens, along with a life of exhausting labor. Medieval childhood was not a time of play or discovery. Children began working almost immediately, herding animals, carrying water, gathering firewood, or working in fields. Many didn't live long enough to reach adulthood. Disease, malnutrition, and harsh winters claimed young lives before they even understood the world around them. Most people never lived past 40, not because they grew old, but because life wore them down. A minor infection could turn deadly. A simple cut from farm tools could lead to a slow, painful death. Famine could wipe out entire villages. War could erase families overnight. Every day was a gamble against an unforgiving world. Forget the idea of cleanliness. Most people rarely bathed. Streets were filled with mud, waste, and animals. Drinking water was contaminated. People poured sewage into rivers, the same rivers they washed in and drank from. Filth and disease were constant companions, forming the perfect breeding ground for plagues. Punked peasants labored from sunrise to sunset. They plowed fields, harvested crops, repaired tools, chopped wood, tended livestock, and struggled through brutal winters. There were no days off, no easy seasons, no breaks. Even children and the elderly worked. Exhaustion was normal. Rest was a luxury only nobles could afford. Food was never guaranteed. A single failed harvest meant starvation. Grain had to be rationed carefully. Meat was rare for ordinary people. Winters were long and merciless. Malnutrition weakened bodies, making disease even more deadly. Many spent entire seasons barely surviving on bread and thin soup. Religion shaped every belief, every fear, and every moral rule. People were taught that suffering was divine punishment, obedience was demanded. Questioning the church was dangerous, and knowledge was tightly controlled. The church decided what was right, what was wrong, and what fate awaited you after death. Nothing belonged to the peasants. Not the soil they plowed, not the homes they lived in, not even the tools they used. Lords taxed everything. They controlled the harvest, the forests, and the rivers. If they demanded more, peasants had no choice but to comply, even if it meant giving up the last of their winter food. The justice system was cruel and often arbitrary. Punishments were public and brutal whippings, mutilation, torture, or execution. Even small crimes could lead to horrifying consequences. Accused without evidence, it didn't matter. Fear kept people obedient far more effectively than fairness. Kings fought for land, knights fought for honor, but ordinary people paid the ultimate price. Armies burned fields, looted homes, and destroyed entire villages. Families fled into forests to escape violence. Survivors were left with nothing. No shelter, no food, no safety. Plagues were unstoppable. The Black Death alone wiped out nearly half of Europe. But even before and after the plague, smaller outbreaks spread constantly through villages. Fevers, infections, and unknown illnesses struck without warning, and most people turned to superstition instead of medicine. Doctors relied on primitive methods, leeches, bloodletting, strange herbs, or spiritual rituals. Without real medical knowledge, treatments often made patients worse. Many illnesses that are harmless today were fatal back then. Women worked as hard as men while carrying the heavy burden of childbirth. Marriages were arranged, rights were limited. Domestic abuse was common and rarely punished. Childbirth was extremely dangerous, and many women died young, leaving families shattered. Urban life wasn't any better. Streets overflowed with trash, dead animals, and human waste. Rats and insects infested every corner. The noise, the smell, the overcrowding, everything was overwhelming. Fire hazards, collapsing buildings, and crime made survival even harder. People blamed demons, witches, or curses for disease and disaster. Without scientific knowledge, fear controlled decisions. Witch hunts and public accusations spread terror, and countless innocent people suffered because of ignorance. Only the wealthy had access to books or learning. Most people never read or wrote a single word in their entire lives. Knowledge was power, and power was kept away from the lower classes to maintain control. A few merchants, craftsmen, or warriors managed to escape poverty through extreme risk, skill, or luck. But most people remained trapped in the same brutal cycle as their ancestors, fighting every day just to make it to the next. Despite the suffering, people still found moments of hope, small joys, family bonds, religious faith, humble celebrations. These brief moments of light helped them endure a world determined to defeat them. The Middle Ages were not noble or romantic. They were raw, unforgiving, and filled with hardships most people today cannot comprehend. Understanding this brutal reality reminds us of humanity's resilience and the incredible distance we've traveled since those dark times.